This is all backwards from the traditional route to getting your private pilot's license. I'm going to share with you how I got my private pilot's license for free and even made a little bit of money, and you can do it too. First, get your medical, make sure you can fly. Second, take your written test, do all your studying. Third, go buy an airplane. That's right, I just said buy an airplane. And then do all your training. And once you get all that done, sell the airplane. That's as simple as it is. Let me explain. Today's episode is sponsored by Hillsdale College. Like I said, first, get a medical. Go see the FAA doctor and make sure you can actually fly. Now, you just go onto the website and then find a local FAA doctor near you and go do the medical. It's pretty simple. It is kind of a general health assessment. You do an eye exam, then you do a pulse and a blood pressure thing, and then they check your reflexes. You gotta go like this, and then you gotta go like this kind of thing. It's and then you know the hammer on the knee deal where you're like whoop whoop, and that goes out like that. Now don't worry if you have some concerns about either your medical history or maybe something you're going through right now, because with enough paperwork, there are ways to overcome most of these medical issues. And there are many different levels of medical. There's the third class medical, which is your standard medical, and that's the one most people are going to go with. Then there's the second class that is more for a second in command. You're going to be doing it professionally, something like that. And then there's a first class, and that is for the full-time commercial pilots, all your airliners, a lot of military, anything where your primary occupation is going to be aviation piloting, you'll need a first-class medical. But for most of us, a third class is fine. And then, if you once you get that, then there's special things for something called a basic med. Now, here's an asterisk in all of this. There's a class of airplane you don't need any of this stuff for. It's called an ultralight, and it's part 103 of the FAR here. And that basically means it's a small airplane. It seats one person usually, a couple of exceptions there. And it doesn't go fast, it doesn't go far, and you're only gonna kill yourself, essentially is what they're saying. Now you can get that airplane and you can fly and you can do all your normal stuff without a medical, without any training, without anything I'm about to talk about. I don't recommend that, however, because it's still an airplane and you still need to know all of the stuff you need to know to fly that airplane or any other airplane. Once you got your medical all squared away and you got your sign off, it's a little card. If you're under the age of 40, it lasts for, I think, 5 years. If you're over the age of 40, a third class lasts for 2 years. And then a second and a first class are shorter than that, every 6 months. So get your medical squared away. And second, you're going to be spending your life in books and in studying and learning everything there is to know about airplanes and how airplanes fly and the weather and the ground and all that stuff. The best part about it is all these books right here that I have, all of these books are free on the FAA website, PDF form. So I'm going to put a link in the description below. You just scroll down to under the video, you'll see the more word and you click on that, it'll open up and you'll see a link to all of these resources here for free from the FAA. And when your brain is all mush and you've had enough of this and you need to take a break, that is today's sponsor, Hillsdale College. What I've been learning about recently is the Federalist Papers. It's amazing. It's all the letters and the discussion about what should and shouldn't be and why the things are in our Constitution, written by some of our very famous founding fathers. And here's the very first Federalist paper. Listen to this. Oh yeah, I forgot I'm old now, so you gotta have these. Oh, that's much better. Yeah. After an unequivocal experience of the inefficacy of the subsisting federal government, you are called upon to deliberate on a new Constitution for the United States of America. Then he goes on to say, we must decide the important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. That is just the opening, and they go on to discuss and talk about all kinds of very, very interesting things that still are happening to this very day. They offer more than 40 free online courses in the most important and enduring subjects. Everything from economics, history, great works of literature, the meaning of the US Constitution, which is what I'm studying right now, can learn about C.S. Lewis, the books of Genesis, American citizenship, all available for free on hillsdale.edu/Jimmy. So go to hillsdale.edu/Jimmy to sign up for your free Hillsdale College course today. I personally recommend the Federalist Papers course because it has brought to life just what makes our country tick. And the educators that are providing these courses, you can tell they are extremely well studied. And I have learned so much already, and it's really given me a new understanding of some of the things that are in the Constitution, like the right to keep and bear arms. What does that mean, a well-regulated militia? They discuss all of that stuff right here. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/Jimmy and enroll in that course today. It's free, or in one of the other 40 courses they offer. You'll be glad you did. Now, let's get back to more fun stuff, like thunderstorms. You have to take a written test to get your private pilot's license. I used Glime material. It was great. I loved it. It was an online ground course, and I actually learned a lot during the process. However, there's a bunch of other ones. Another one that if you just want to pass a test and you don't care about learning anything and you want pure rote memorization, the Shepherd Air, their process is just purely to pass the test, rote memorization, so you can memorize the answers on the test. But frankly, my candid opinion is you don't learn anything, but you can pass the test with like a 75%, and you just need a 70 to pass because C's get degrees, you know what I'm saying? I know there's a lot more ground schools out there, so just find one that works for you in your situation. The Glime one, I want to say it cost me like 150 bucks or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was not too crazy expensive, and I had 24 months to do it all, so I wasn't hurried to do it. And then of course you gotta take the test. So again, back on the FAA website, you sign up for their tests. There are several ones, different organizations do different testing, and you just pick whichever one you want to do. Now there are different prices. So mine, I did through PSI in a local flight school, and it was about 165 bucks because it fit my schedule and it was a lot closer to my house. However, the FAA, you can do them at those designated areas, and they're a lot cheaper. They're only like 50 bucks or $65 or something like that. So it's a lot cheaper to do it that way, but they don't have the availability. And then once you get your written test, it's good for 2 years. So you got 2 years to get your training done and to get your check ride, or else you got to retake the test again. So make sure you're ready to go. So once you got your pass test certificate in your hand, now comes my favorite part, buying an airplane. And I know the first thing you're going to say is, that's really crazy expensive and you can't just go out and buy an airplane. I mean, who does that, right? That's not how it's normally done. Well, here's how I did it, and I ended up making money doing it this way, and so can you. First things first, don't worry about finding the money if you don't have the money. Finding a good airplane is much more difficult and takes longer and more work than actually finding the money. This is the part about financial decisions that every financial expert will tell you not to listen to me. However, this is how I've made money. So, you know, there's that. For me, in my situation, I knew I was gonna get my private and then immediately get my instrument rating. So the airplane that I was gonna buy had to be instrument rated as well, because airplanes don't always come that way. You gotta make sure which airplane you're gonna need that's gonna fit what you're trying to do. So then, these are some rough guidelines for finding a good deal on an airplane. You buy an engine and you get an airplane for free. That's just the way it is. And I've learned that many, many times over. That is the single best piece of advice that I've been given in my time of buying, or acquiring 14 aircraft in 4 years. You buy an engine, you get an airplane for free. The second piece of advice on that is don't buy an airplane from Florida because of corrosion. So if you get a good engine, the airplane itself, corrosion could be a non-fixer on that airplane. There's nothing you can do about it. So you have to be really, really studious about corrosion. Once you get past those two things, how do you know if you got a good engine? You don't, honestly. But there's some ways you can figure it out and ask the right questions. These are the questions I ask when I go to buy an airplane. First, I want to know the story. Why is this person selling it? What's the history of it? Are there logbooks? Are they complete? Is there any damage history that is or is not in those logbooks? Because let's face it, these logbooks are only what somebody is willing to write down and be liable for. So there's an awful lot of stuff that happens that never makes it into these logbooks. That's just a brutal reality of this. If you're not a mechanical person, you're getting ready to get educated, and you need to be a mechanical person if you're going to go through this process, or you need to have a buddy or somebody that is so they know what to look for. So once you get the story and it makes sense, like the guy got older, he hasn't flown it in a year or 2 years, or maybe he has been flying it but he's lost his medical and he just can no longer flies it, that's the story you want, and that's a very common story. The story that you don't want is, well, it was over here and then this happened and then that happened and yeah, no, it's been flying great and it's only been flying to pancake runs and no, there's definitely nothing wrong with it. Well, then why is it such a good deal? Those are the ones you got to be careful about because those are the ones that will come back to bite you. There's something not right there. Engine. You want to make sure that the rebuild, the date that it was rebuilt is within 20 years. Because insurance, if you're going to get insurance on it, they don't cover any engines that are older than 20 years. If you're planning on renting it back, that's another way to make money with an airplane, is you can rent it back to a flight school. It has to be less than 12 years rebuilt. So you got to know the date that the engine was rebuilt. The second biggest step is how many hours are on that engine since its major overhaul. Most Lycomings will go about 2,000 hours between their scheduled or what they recommend as overhaul, even though it's not actually a rule. In Part 91, when you're not making money, you're gonna run that stinking thing till it won't run anymore, until it's not safe. And it could be 3,000 or 4,000 hours, double whatever their TBO time is, and you're still perfectly legal and safe. If you're gonna rent it back and do commercial work with it and have it paid for, different rules apply. You got to make sure it's within 12 years and in that TBO time. The other thing, take into consideration, you want to make sure that when you're done with your training, you can sell it and the next person is still going to want to buy it, so there's still hours on that engine that they're going to buy. For example, if an engine has 2,000 hour TBO, or that's the time that they recommend rebuilding it, make sure it has less than half of that to buy it, or really darn close to half of that. 1,100, I would not go more than 1,100. Anything more than that, people get kind of weird and, well, it's kind of high time and all this, and it makes it very, very difficult to sell. So get something with less than 1,000 hours on it, and 9 times out of 10, you're good to go. Nobody questions it. That's step number one. Step number two is, what has that engine been doing? Has it been sitting outside in Florida on the coast where everything is going to be corroded and the camshaft and other things that you're not going to see are probably going to go bad on you, and it's extremely expensive to fix. That's why the old adage, and I said it before, I'll say it probably 20 more times, you buy an engine, you get an airplane for free. Just a camshaft and lifters on one of these small airplane engines is $15,000. I'm not kidding, so you have to figure out ways to mitigate your risk of a catastrophic failure or financial. So once you got the right airplane with the right engine, the logbooks, and the damage history, now you got to figure out how much and negotiate the price on that. You can either buy it cash straight out if you just happen to have a load of cash sitting in your bank that you don't know what to do with. That's the easiest way, honestly. You can get a loan for it, whether it's a HELOC loan or a life insurance loan or whatever. Then there's actually airplane companies that loan on airplanes, and they're going to have a lot more restrictions on what they'll finance and to make sure your insurance and other requirements. So you can get a loan for it. You can find partners. You can team up with a few people and say, hey, we're all going to go in this together. Let's all put, however much money we have into a pot, and then we're going to buy this airplane, and then once we're done with our licenses, we're going to sell it, and then we're out of it, or something like that. Then the other way, which nobody talks about but is very common, seller financing. So you go find the airplane, and it's $50,000. Wow, that's a great airplane. You go to the seller and you say, look, I'm trying to learn how to fly, and I want to have money for maintenance, I want to have money for fuel, my trainer, and everything else. If I give you so much money down and I'll have insurance on it, can I just pay you monthly payments for the next 2 years or something? And then when I go to sell it, you get the first cut to pay off before I take any of that money. A lot of times they'll say yes, frankly. So you just got to ask, and it's more common than you might realize. Here's a couple of websites I use to find airplane. Easiest one, Facebook Marketplace. There's a ton of them on there. The next one, Craigslist, not as many on there. Then I go to Barnstormers. You can spend days of your life on that website. And then you go to Trade-A-Plane is a pretty good one. You're starting to get into a lot of listed planes, and once they make it on there, they're usually not good deals, honestly, unless they've been on there for a while, and you just gotta lowball them, and you get a lot of no's before you get a yes. And then Controller is usually for the higher end, the more broker type of website. But Facebook Marketplace, frankly, is the better one, or some of the forums about the specific type of airplane you're looking for. Twin Cessna, if you're looking for a 310, you go to twincessna.org. They have forums and stuff like that. If you're looking for a Bonanza, they've got Bonanza forums, or Lancer, they got Lancer stuff. Oh, experimental versus certified airplanes. Well, an experimental airplane is a third the price of a certified airplane. Baha, there's a catch, but there's a way around that catch. To do training in a experimental airplane, you have to get a special little note from the FAA saying, yes, you can do training in this airplane. You, and only you, can do training in this airplane. And then you have to have your flight instructor also see that note, and everybody has to agree with it because you're getting paid for it, and an experimental is something that's not supposed to make money or be paid or be in commercial type use. So it gets a little weird with that, but it's not that difficult. You just have to get the FAA involved and get your special note to show your CFI, and then they'll ask you some other questions. Not a big deal. I would recommend an experimental airplane purely because they're so much cheaper, and frankly, if I'm honest with you, they're more dependable in most cases than a certified airplane. A 172, I mean, one that's working, you're starting for an old jalopy that is high time and it's gonna be a lot of maintenance, $75,000. It's just ridiculous how expensive they are. And then they just go up from there. You just put a zero on it and keep going. An experimental, you can get an RV or, something like that, 25 grand, 45 grand. You can get in a starting position for something like that if you just had the cash. And experimentals, you can negotiate a little bit more, and the more parts available for it. You don't need a IA mechanic to sign off on your annual inspections. You just need an A&P, and there's more A&Ps than there are IAs, and they're usually a lot more reasonably priced to do that kind of thing. So now we have the airplane. We've picked it out, we've acquired it. Now is when you actually start flying and training in the airplane, and I highly recommend you start and you finish and do your check ride all in the same airplane, because you'll get to learn it, you'll get to learn the feel of it, because every airplane feels a little bit different, even the same one. So if you have a 172 and you've been doing all your training, and then for your check ride you go into a 172, but it's actually a different airplane 172, it's going to be different. They just are. Each one is very unique to itself. So start and finish with the same airplane. So once you have the airplane and you're loving it, you've acquired it, now it's time to start training. I recommend just finding a local instructor at the local airport. Some of them, a lot of the pilots out there that do it for a living are CFIs, and they'll be able to do it as a side gig on the weekends or when they're not doing their normal corporate gig. I have found it to be a much more relaxed environment, because a lot of times what happens in these flight schools is you get these younger guys and all they're doing is trying to build up time to get to 1,500 hours so they can take their ATP rating and then go on to a regional airline or a cargo airline or something like that. all they're doing is building time. Where if you go to the local airport and you find one of these, an older guy, corporate guy, a lot of them are CFIs, they can do all your training. And you get the flight experience of somebody older. They might have tens of thousands of hours, and they're doing it because they love to do it, not because they have to do it, like some of the younger guys going through these schools and are just, a puppy mill. They're just trying to get all the hours they can, and then they're, padding hours and sitting there on the taxiway to get extra hours and stuff like this. No, go find an older guy at the airport that does it corporately, and he just loves to fly, and do it on the weekends or on his days off. Often it'll be a lot cheaper too. Here's a couple of things I wish I would have known before I did my method. I wish I would have known about the size of a 152. That's the airplane I thought I was going to get, and then I kept having instructors and the DPEs, the check ride people that take you on a check ride, ask me how tall and how heavy I was every single time about a 152. And apparently, still to this day, I've never actually flown in one, but you're like this inside of it, and the other person is like right here. And you have to be really small and short and thin with only like a cup full of gas is all that's going to fit in one of those airplanes. So immediately I decided I did not want a 152. One of the best decisions I ever made. What I also wish I would have known about is a Kit Fox. They're super cheap. They're side by side. They are experimental, but they're a fantastic learning airplane. Honestly, if I had to do it over again, I'd probably look for one of those smaller airplanes like a Kit Fox or a Citabria or something like that are just a much more rudimentary type of airplane, and then bought and did all my first training in that, and then sold that, and then got into something to do my instrument training as well. The next lesson, learn to work on your airplane. It will save you tens of thousands of dollars in a very short period of time just by knowing how much you can do as an owner of maintenance. I mean, oil changes and tires and spark plugs. You can service your struts. You can do a huge amount of stuff as an owner that you might think you could do on an airplane. Then with that, I also will say, become best friends with an IA. You're gonna need them. With the FAA, it's all about covering their behinds with liability, because if an airplane crashes, the first thing the FAA is going to do is, who touched this airplane last? That's just what they do. So mechanics are scared to death to put their name in what they did in these logbooks, because they know at some point it may come back to them. So it's all about CYA in the airplane world, because lawyers are lawyers and they try to find somebody to put blame on for whatever it is. So it's all about covering your assets. If you're young, you don't have any money, nobody's going to give you a loan, nobody's going to trust you, go get a job at an airport. Or even better yet, go get a job as a mechanic's assistant to learn how to work on them and clean them and change the oil and do all this stuff. Most owners will gladly take you flying, will gladly give you rides in the airplane, or even let you take the controls, especially if you're a mechanic helping keep that airplane in the air. So go get a job, even volunteer if you have to on weekends or evenings or whatever it is, to get yourself around airplanes and airplane people. Last, most importantly, just go and do it. You don't see the crackhead down there in the corner saying, oh, I just can't find a way to, get my today's hit. No, they find a way to do it, and so should you. And then here's where you make money and get your license for free. When you're done with your training, you sell the airplane. And then usually, especially recently, airplane prices have been going up and up and up, and they go up enough to where you make money. But then, even if they stay the same or even go down some, your offset by your rental cost far exceeds the cost of renting that thing. So that's the secret to it, is you do all your book work and your medical and everything else. You buy the airplane, do all your training in the airplane, then you sell the airplane when you're done, and now, magically, you've got your pilot's license for free.